where I come from, and I've been thinking the section for I think 10 years or more. Yeah, so it's been hectic. But another thing is the learning curve as well is quite steep. I must say, because we have to change, your path basically. So it was quite a very steep learning curve. But I think we've managed so far, and we've tried to adapt, and hopefully we can adapt even further to further develop these things. So the PRO program is one of the programs that was initiated, fell in the responsibility of another colleague who has since retired, and then after he retired, it then fell solely on as part of my responsibilities to develop it and to, or not only just develop it, but also to um, teach it or to introduce it and to others, to teach them and guide them how to properly use the program to extract information and so forth. So not only do I just develop it, but also run short courses within the department. I normally have about 3 or 4 short courses divided into two. One is a basic course, and the other one is an advanced course. Because it's quite a hectic thing that we cover, so we've decided to split it into two. So basically, I'll just go through it so that at least you can see what it covers, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions after that. So I'll start by just going through. This won't be long, by the way. What PRUs are, because you can see that it talks about them being ecological areas, and we want to see similarities within these factors here. So you're looking at the soil type, you're looking at climate, and also most of the vegetation. And there's many other things as well that are there, but I'm just trying to summarize. And how the PRU codes look like, they look like that. You can see it's what do you call it? A big letter, small letter, and a number. That code, as you can see, there's a rainfall code. This is the altitude code, and this is just a number of occurrence of the code that looks like that. So the same thing applies to that. And all these definitions in terms of what X stands for and what Y stands for, you'll find in the definitions report that comes with the database. And there are many ways in which you can select information. One of them is through a point. You can select if you've got different ways. If you know the PRO, you can go in there and you can enter it, as you can see there. Or you can actually just go copy it and paste it, maybe from an email. You can use this option, or even from text files. You can also use coordinates if you've got coordinates with the different formats, whether it is decimal degrees, minutes and seconds, or even degrees, decimal minutes. And then the other way in which you can select PRU codes has to do with area. So you can also select them as areas, you can see from those examples in there. And once you've selected those PRUs, you can then choose what sort of reports you want to generate from it. The PRU, maybe just to stop here, the PRU was mainly, and I say was, because we've since developed it to other things that are now beyond the initial scope, was mainly developed to generate reports. Why reports? Because you are looking at a very big province, and you're trying to come up with recommendations in terms of what can be done where, in terms of agriculture. And so you want to then summarize your information that you're giving out. So you develop these units which are called PRUs, that have got those similarities that I've mentioned in the first slide. And after that, you then say, okay, if these are similar in terms of the soil, in terms of the climate, in terms of the vegetation, then you're making an assumption that then even the management that is needed whenever, if maybe you were to plant certain crops, the management within those areas will be similar. So that's the assumption in there. And then if once you've done those assumptions and you've created those units, then you generate reports on the basis of all those units. Then this is where you select the reports, And there are many ways in which these reports are selected, and I think I'll go through them so that you can see how everything works. You can see here, you can select all reports. There's just a many other things that go into this. We've got our own terminologies. You can see it says standard set of reports, and that can be explained as well. But it's just one of the things that we have developed. We know that normally people require information in this format, and then we made that to be a standard report. So that's why it appears like that. But there's many other ways in which you can select reports and generate them. And once you've processed them, you can also save those reports. And if you don't need them anymore, those once the PRs that we've selected, you can then delete them. And I'll just go through it. And we also talk about management factor. This is important because we observe that commercial farmers and as compared to subsistence farmers, like for instance, will as much as they may have the same type of access to the same land, but because of the management experiences or maybe even access to resources, they may not be able to perform the same. And so this factor is another way in which we take into account the differences between the skills or the experiences of the person who's responsible for this. In a case where, like for instance, there is a problem with frost, if maybe a person who is farming in that area is not so experienced with the occurrence of frost and how to prevent it, or how to prevent the impact of the frost, compared to someone who has had the experience. You see, they will respond differently, and that their response will actually determine whether they get a certain type of yield or not. So we felt we need to take that into account in our estimations, particularly on the crop yields. And what you can get from there is a variety of maps that we generate. Most of these maps are created on the fly. Information is drawn from the database, and you basically creating a new map every time, and there's quite a lot of them, and you can save them as PDFs or JPEGs, and attach them to your reports if you need to. But what we always emphasize is after you've generated all the information in the manner that I'm going to show you, you must consider it as a first approximation, which means one would still need to go into the field to verify the information. Why? Because we are working at a very much a larger scale at a provincial level. We are zooming into a farm level. The information is generated using data that is actually on a much bigger scale. So you still need to go in there, even though the bureau may say, we feel like in this farm, it might be suitable for 1, 2, and 3, but you still need to go into the field. Dr. Sandila would know, and carry out actual surveys in there, whether it's a soil survey, or if maybe you were looking at putting animals in there, you look at the field, whether it's suitable, how many animal units you can fit in that space, and many other things that you would need to do. So you can't just generate the report and run with it and say this is what it says and this is what I expect. You still need to verify information that you have generated from the program. But the estimations are quite good for long term because of the data that we are using. It's quite good for long term. They might, we still need to improve some of the models to take into account the current conditions and the issue that many other varieties have come into the play. But yeah, it's work in progress, so it never ends, so to say. This just shows you what the program looks as soon as you go into it. Many other things that are available in there, I'm not going to touch on them, just to show you that it also has a mapping functionality where you can generate maps. You can see the example of those maps in there. Very primitive looking, because the PRU was never really created to be a mapping program. It is primarily a database where we're extracting information in the form of reports. But reports normally, especially when you're dealing with partial data farms, you want to see them somewhere on a map. So that's why we added this very limited mapping view of it. But for our extension officers and people who are not very trained in the map space or GIS, we found that is quite sufficient, and they use it very well. And we've also created bridges with the PRO program where we can now connect the files that we are creating on this site with Google Earth, because we saw that people are using Google Earth a lot, and we also we are able to do things, basic things like calculating areas, the perimeter of areas and things like that. And you can also digitize, which is, of course, now I'm going deeper into the space of GIS, but as an introduction, basically, it's not as advanced as it may sound. So that's how it is in terms of the overview of what you get from the PRO program. And what then I want to move into is the actual program so that you can see how it works. This is how it looks, and I think most people have seen this. So I'm just going to go into it, click on this one here. I've read and understood the disclaimer, and you can see, as I was showing you, that this is a way in which you generate or you select my PROs. So in this case, you can see this is the PRO box. This is where you select the reports, and this is the management factor, currently sitting at 70%. We are looking at global warming, but over Manje, I've said no, I'm not going to look at it. Global warming, we're just looking at temperature in case maybe you are interested. So I'm just going to select the PRO code so you can see how it works. First of all, let me just clear this one out, manage, empty. Then I'm going to select, maybe type in VB12. That's the PRO. Once I'm finished, I'm just going to say OK, and then it will select that PRO and put it in that PRO box. Why do I go this way and not just go straight type here? It's because here this is not enabled for editing, so I have to use this way. Why do we use this way? So that we can make sure that everything that you type is the correct PRO. If you've typed the wrong PRO, it will tell you that this PRO is not known, it's not the correct one. So once you've typed it, it gets inserted into that box. Once it is in this box here, then you can choose what sort of report you want to see. In this case, I'm going to unselect every one of them here and maybe just check the climate details. Once I've selected that, for that, I can click on reports to generate that report, and that report will be generated. You can see the climate report in there, the figures or parameters that we are reporting on. It's telling you where it is. This is the nearest town, how it falls, or nearest place or known landmark. And if I want to save this, I can just go to File. I want to save this report, climate report, and I'm going to change the type here and say I want to save it as a PDF on my desktop. I'm going to call it VB12. Looks like I already had VB12. If I just minimize my screen, not sure whether I'll be able to find it. There it is. So I'll move it here. You can see it has been saved as a PDF. Open that. Close this. Yeah. So there it is. You can see it's a PDF. All that information is available in there. So what it does is it goes into our database, looks at what we have selected in terms of the PRO there, and then it is able to extract the information that is sitting in our database. All this information, we're getting it from different sources, but primarily the climate stuff, I guess that we are getting it from the Schulze model. I think it's agrometeorology section up there, the last. I'm not sure whether what they call themselves now, but from the atlas that they produce, this is where we're extracting this information. But more to that, we also go through and check, because we have realized that there are some errors within the data that Schulze is producing. So especially for areas that we know, we can go in there and look at nearby stations, weather stations, and see how they perform, and then we can actually use and those values instead of using what he has. But basically for now we can say we are using stuff that is coming from Schulze, and this is what he has given us. And all this, I think, we can then draw certain conclusions from this data. So that's how you generate a report. So close and go back there. And once you have selected this, of course, you can, if like, or maybe just let me start here. You saw that I've generated a report of this VB12, and now it has been written done because I'm done with it. So I can go there and say I want to select a report or maybe PRUs on the basis of a farm boundary. So I'm just going to go on this option here. Then I'm going to call it maybe this farm here. It's called Adventure. Select that farm. And this screen says, what do you want to do? Do you want to select all the BRUs in that farm? And say, yes, I want to select all of them. And it actually can tell you, you can see how many BRUs are there. In this and then click, say, copy them to the BRU box. So it will be copied into that box. Once it is here, then I can choose whatever report I want to generate on that. I can say I want to generate field management. Let me just do the front page as well. Click on reports. Run that. You can see it has generated the report. It has 3 pages. First one is the cover page, as you can see, and then these I can navigate through this, go to the second page, and then go to the last page in there. I can do the same thing in terms of saving it as a PDF. And we always recommend that we save everything as a PDF because that's the most stable format that we've got compared to the other ones, your HTML, that are available there. I'm not sure whether I still have everyone's attention. If maybe there's somewhere I'm rushing, can let me know. Thing is, for some of us, since I've been using this for a while, some things I tend to overlook, and maybe I go too fast over them. You can always stop me. Then from there, we can have a discussion. And then remember I told you that not only does it generate reports, but it also does a few mapping. Just go click and say open a map. Just going to open a basic map. Click here, and it will open a screen map. Sorry for that. So this is just showing you a KZN map, and if I wanted to zoom into that farm, I can click on, I'm not sure whether you can see here at the bottom right, click on farms, and then it will then zoom into that farm that I just selected. In this case, it was Adventure. It shows it, and if I wanted to, I can always load a topographic map by just pressing Alt F5 on my keyboard. It looks like I actually don't have those data sets, but it will have loaded my topographic images in there, showing you just the basic stuff, whether it's cultivated areas. I'm sure you understand the topographic maps or images, how they look. I'm just going to click here. Sorry for that. And this is how it works. If I need to, I can always save this map as a JPEG. I'm going to call it Adventure 1. So it will be saved as a JPEG. Just as you can see it on the screen like that. Let's go back to my desktop. There it is. So it will appear like this. If I saved it like that, just like this as the normal JPEG, but I can also save it as more like a report by just saying I want to create a layout out of this. Click on create layout and then do layout. It will generate something that looks like the report that we did initially. You can see from there, it will have all the things there, your scale bars, your legend, You can also change these titles if you need to, and I can save this one as a PDF like I did with the report. Once that has been saved, it comes here, Adventure 2. You can see it appearing now as a PDF, and that can be printed or it can be emailed to whomever is requiring this information. This is just a basic thing that the guys at in our regions are using in terms of the mapping side of it. But for us, of course, because we are much more exposed to the different technologies of map making, then we use a different platform for that. I think we mostly are familiar with ArcMap. So that's what we normally use. But the information is sitting in the database, whether it's BRF shapefiles, whether it's the climatic stuff, whether it's the other shapefiles that we are using in the background. It's all available. And how do you get this? You get it by installation currently. You install it on your laptop, and you are able then to use it after that. The move now is to move everything, because remember I told you this is the legacy project, is now to move everything from this platform, a desktop platform, into an online platform. And so that's the work that I'm doing currently. There is stuff that is happening, but it's just an introduction. Um, we had asked the guys at Esri to assist us, and they started on the work, but we're not very happy with the product. So I think we will from now on we are taking it over ourselves to develop it and have it available on our website. And you can, if you need information in the BRE program, you can actually just navigate to our website and you will see a link to find that in there. But as soon as that is available, people will announce it properly that now you can actually access the information via the website. The platform will change, of course, but I think in terms of the information, you will still find the similar type of information. Of course, we'll improve it over time so that at least we take into account new information and new ways of doing things, particularly with regards to crop estimations. There's a lot that goes on behind this, but currently this is how it looks. We hope that maybe we can take it further. I can maybe stop here and then allow the questions to come in, Dr. Sandile, and then we can take it from there.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mashele. Thank you. Actually, I actually didn't know that you've now linked. I don't know if it was like that even when I was still using the program. That was maybe 2013. That was the last time I used it. So was it already? I don't know if it was already linked with the Google Earth, or it's a new. It's something that has been added recently.
Not sure what year it was, but it's been around for quite a while. Just that there's a lot of things that sometimes we don't get to touch on every aspect of it, but we tend to go over it via the courses.
Oh yeah. Okay, no, thank you very much, sir. I think I see there is quite a number of hands. So let me see, where do we start? Okay, Mr. Rabotada.
Thanks very much for the presentation, Dumisani. I'm interested in checking what's on the field data there, because I wanted to see if what comes out after you have done your field surveys there, and what do you do there in the field when you go there personally after having extracted that from your map. I wonder if my question is clear.
Maybe I'm trying to understand it. Remember, I'm not a field person. As I indicated, there's specialists that deal with the field information part of the program. So this is what they give us in terms of the information for each BRU. But I do know that after they've done an assessment, then maybe for a specific farm, they would do an assessment in the field, come back do the analysis of the species and things like that. And then from there, they write a report, and that report looks a little bit different from what you see in the PRU. So these are just average values that I'm showing, and that's what we are showing in the PRU program. It may not be as detailed as I think you would expect it to be, but this is currently what they have.
So it's not possible for you to zoom it so that you can fill up the screen. Yeah, you can scroll. Okay, no, this is very interesting. So, but is it possible for one to have this kind of tool to use anywhere in South Africa, or let's say in Mpumalanga province?
That question always comes. The challenge is that our jurisdiction has always been KZN, and so going over the province has always been a challenge. In fact, there was once a project to try and expand the manner in which so that we can have it available for other provinces as well. But because of the restrictions of jurisdiction, we couldn't. So I think, though, in terms of how this can be replicated, I think it's possible to be replicated. Because currently, unfortunately, it's just within KZN. But I think the way and the approach can always be replicated, and we can even improve from this and make it in such a way that it is much, much better. So I think as soon as we are done with the project of taking this online and making it available, then we will actually be forced to go beyond what we currently are offering. But there's a lot of politics as well that is involved in this. I know that there's currently, I'm not sure whether there's colleagues from the National Department of Agriculture of standardizing data sets or information, particularly agricultural information. They are now saying we should use certain data sets that is coming from the national department, even with regards to estimation of agricultural potential. Whether you've got a better data sets or not, you are now then required, we will be required to use their data sets. So I'm not sure whether that is possible, but I think as departments or institutions, wherever you are, it should be possible to replicate it. It's just a matter of then maybe just going through and learning how or how did we consider this and that, and that can be implemented in other provinces as well.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Not sure whether
Oh, sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry. Bonkosi. I don't know if your mic is yes. Ungakhuluma ba?
Total.
We can hear you.
Timkul, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
It's all day. Yeah. Thanks, Don. Look. Yeah, no. Thank you very much, Mr. Mashele. I think it was a very, thank you very much, Mr. Mashele. I think it was a very, very informative presentation. I just want to know, because you touched a little bit on global warming. As we know that we are experiencing climate change. These parameters that we use, Mr. Mashele, how often do you change them? We know that there's always temperatures are rising and they are decreasing. Rainfall is unpredictable. How often do you do the ground truthing just to make sure that? And then the other thing is the grid distribution, the weather station. How are your weather station that you said you're relying from shores as factors? How are they distributed? Are they congested or they are far distributed? And I want to also to check on your map. I didn't see that this is the issue of a scale. Can you nudge it? Can you change it, or is it a fixed scale in terms of your when you're doing the map? Thanks, Mr. Mashele.
Okay, maybe I can just respond to that, Dr. Sandile. Sorry, Dr. Mr. Vilaz there. Yes, we are relying on Schulze data because there is no other source that we currently have, particularly in the province, and that is available to us. So we rely on Schulze stuff, but remember Schulze stuff are long-term averages, and currently we are looking at long-term view. The issue with climate change is that there's a lot of opinions. That's one, and also in terms of what causes it. So the issue of greenhouse gases, which has been shown to also be contributing to the climate change problems. To capture that in a program space, you need quite a lot of parameters. So we're just looking at a shortcut, so to say. So what we did was to then create basically an what if scenarios, and we said to ourselves, we may not know what causes it, but the resulting factor or the suspicion that we've been told is that it will affect temperatures. So if it is going to affect temperatures, let's then simulate different scenarios where there has been a change in terms of the average temperature. And these are the increments that we are looking at. We're looking at 0.5 degrees. So we are moving up by 0.5 degree on the annual temperatures. So that affects, of course, your monthlies as well. So we're just looking at the temperature, and we say if the temperature increases, probably you will also find that it affects the other factors like rainfall, also the evaporation, the amount of humidity in the atmosphere. So that will drive also. So it affects the entire spectrum of your climatic variables. So that's why we're looking at only temperature in this case as a scenario, not taking into account the actual situation that we are finding ourselves in. If we were to model the current, so it means one would have to be very busy, because I would have to each month look at the averages and then adjust and not just use, I would have to use a much more complicated models as well to model how these things are getting affected. So we currently are just looking at the temperature, and we're just doing, it's a what if, sorry, it's a what if scenario. If it increases by 5 degrees, or so 0.5 degrees, what will happen in terms of the crop production? And in there we then see, in fact, if I could just select one here, I'm not sure whether this is going to be a good example. I'm just going to go to it here so that you can see how it works. Cropping versus global warming. Run the report there, and hopefully it works. Let's wait for it. These things can shock you when you least expect it. Okay, this is just an example in there. I hope this is going to be a good example. So you see, we're saying, if we look at cabbages that are transplanted in January, this is what we are expecting in terms of the normal, under normal circumstances. But if you push up the temperature here, you can see that we're experiencing a drop in the yield in terms of that cabbage. So there's a crop model in the background that is running how the cabbage would behave in terms of productivity, the yield. And we see that if you change temperature, this is what we're getting. So this is how we're capturing your climate change. I'm not sure that, so that everyone can see in this thing here. And you can see that actually in others, if like for instance, you transplant in July, it's unsuitable currently in July. But if you increase the temperature, it does look like, where's July here? It does look like if you increase the temperature in July by 1 degree, you will start actually getting some yield. You see, so that's how we are capturing it. We're just doing a what if scenario, and just to see how this will affect yield. We are not doing anything very fancy or much more complicated. It's just to see how this will behave under different circumstances when the temperature has been altered. I'm not sure whether that is it captures your your curiosity, sir.
Yes, Mr. Mashele. But if I am allowed to ask to need another clarity, just Doc, can I follow up? Just I asked, and then I think we were still going to go to a map, the issue of scale. Oh, we didn't get the question.
Maybe you can. We can interact so that you can tell me what is it that you're talking about. I went here. You mean scale in terms of what?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yes, the scale of the map, please. I was asking that, is it fixed or you can change it?
Or you mean to so that it caters other areas beyond the province?
No. The scaling, like I saw that is like 1:50. One on the map is 50,000 K. I'm not sure how I can't see it now. If you can, like for example, if your scale is big, you can show. Yeah, I think now it's big.
Yeah. I think. Oh, you mean the scale bar? Is that?
Yes. Yeah, I was trying to say, for example, for a large, if your scale is large, it doesn't show a lot of. Yeah, now it's a small scale whereby you can see the vegetation, the soil, different parameters. That's what I was trying to ask. I was asking that.
Oh yeah, yes, it is. What do you call it? It's we do have a scale dependency factored in, yes, so that as you zoom into a space, it shows you more detail and more detail.
More details. I wanted to ask, but just that other thing, just for curiosity, if you do the ground truth thing and then you find that the parameters that you get, for example, the bioresource that you showed us from Howick, if you You go there and do the ground truthing, and then you find that the factors are different, the parameters are different. Do you dispute shoes as parameters, or you keep them as they are? What do you do? Or do you contact him and say, no, Prof. Shoes, this thing of yours is no longer working? What do you do?
Well, well, at some point we may need to tell him if something doesn't work. I think maybe he may need to be told. But currently
you pay him. Is any monetary value, or is just doing for the community? It's a kind
well, I would have to check with my colleagues. There's we have a climatologist who deals with in terms of sourcing the data and everything else. And I'm not sure whether he relies on his good relationship with the department, because he works with them for a lot. But not only just schools, but we're also getting some information, especially the weather station from ARC. So there is also that relationship that we have with them. That's why I said we did notice some errors in some of the estimations that we had, and we've had to adjust and say no, we can't accept this value, and that was made known to him. So there's always going to be a problem, because he also is modeling the stations distribution has always been a problem, because some stations work, some stations don't. So even the data record would be a problem. You find some have got a shorter record than others, and he has to do these estimations. So I don't know how they do it in terms of the detailed science. Yes, I was in the department, in his department, in terms of my academic schooling, and we used to model a lot of this. But I know that there's a lot of problems. There's areas that I have got big gaps. So
yes,
through the models of interpolation, you try and fill up those gaps. Whether you try improve the type of model that you're using, maybe you creek, or maybe you do any other types of. But I know that he was using your inverse. Initially, it was inverse distance, something to model the data. But there's always going to be issues. You will underestimate, you'll overestimate in some areas. But yeah, when we find problems, we do let him know, and we do then have a discretion to disregard certain data sets and take something that we know that it does sound and looks much more reliable than his.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mashele. Just one last question. Don't you know the number of stations in KZN? I'm not sure. I'm just yeah, especially in northern KZN. I think we rely from, you can say, from Josin, Pongola, Dumbe, Port Petersburg, Freihead, Nongoma, Lundi, Melmoth, Show, all these areas. There's no reliable weather station. Don't we know the district and the number of weather stations? Especially, I'm very interested in northern KZN. I'm just asking if there's anyone beside you, Mr. Mashele. It can be Dr. Mtimku. I think you were at this side. Do you know the number of weather stations? There's someone who was trying to do that in another conference, but he didn't come back to me. If there's anyone. Thank you very much. Anyway, it was a very interesting. I learned a lot. Thanks, Mr. Mashele.
And I think that information should be available. I think we can check it, maybe revert back to you.
Thank you very much, Bongosi and Mr. Mashele. I see there is another hand. Actually, there is more hands. Malaji, thank you for your patience.
Thanks very much. And thanks very much, Mr. Mashele, for the presentation. I just want to find out what is the thinking of the province in terms of incorporating satellite imagery to monitor field condition and crop health. I think one way or the other, the use of NDVI might be beneficial, and you can have a perspective of the crop and field as it is growing. So I just want to find out what is the thinking in terms of that space. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Malachi. The that's very interesting actually. I know that Sansa, one of our ex-colleagues, one of them, Dr. Clement Ajololo, moved to Sansa, and they had access to their resources there in terms of the satellites, and then being able to generate these things. I think I'm not sure whether on a daily basis, because they do have access to satellite imagery in there. So there was once a thinking to bring in that type of an approach. The problem with departments, particularly government departments, is that sometimes priorities are not always where we want them to be. So the suggestion was once made to procure or to have a relationship with these institutions that can supply us with these satellite images, and we can then run, as you've said, even source the NDVIs, and we can then be able to generate those type of things on a maybe monthly basis. But it's not always, it doesn't move as fast as one would wish. Even though previously we used to actually do NDVIs, and just one gentleman, I can't remember what he was doing, but he used to do something on that, but then it just fell off. It was not part of the program, the database that I'm presenting, but it was something that he was doing on the side. So when he left for Netherlands, I think then he left with that idea, because it has not picked up ever since. But I think it's a very good point for us to move into that space, especially if you want to know what is happening in terms of the things on the ground. So maybe I will take that as a suggestion, see how that can be workshopped further. But yeah, I must say the skills within the department are very much lacking. So that's why there's a lot of things that are not being done. If they are being done, not to the level that we expect them to be. But yeah, I would take that as a nice suggestion that maybe we should look into. Maybe it's a sign that you must also consider moving here.
That's okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Mbanjwa. And then it's gonna be gift after that.
Evening, everyone. Dr. Mtukul, I think I'm trying to remember. I think when I raised my hand, I wanted to intervene on what Dr. Bulagazi was asking Dumisani earlier. And by the way, thanks, Mr. Mashele, for your wonderful presentation. I think it was refreshing. So I think my concern was just to highlight something that Dumisani mentioned, and probably Vilagazi did not grasp it. Vilagazi, PRU is never a substitute for you to go to the field. I think your concern was more on the accurateness. Hence, my emphasis was just to remind you that That is the reason why Mr. Mashele earlier said it's never a substitute for you to say, now I'm going to do desktop work because I can generate these reports within seconds. That is why you still have to go to the field to do those verifications yourself. I think my emphasis was just that. Other than that, I have no question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I hope that helps. Dr. Vilagazi. Okay, thank you very much, Busi. Yes.
Thanks.
Are you satisfied, Bonkos?
I think we'll take it further with Mr. Mbanj. But I think Mr. Mbanj. Thanks. Clarified.
Okay, all right. Okay, no, thank you. Sorry, Gift. Yes, Gift.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Quite a lot of interesting things there to highlight. So first I wanted to add a comment on the question regarding the weather station, because I had some article that I wrote about floods and drought monitoring in South Africa. So I interacted with the weather service guys. They sent me a Google file with all the weather stations that have active detections of temperature, wind, you name it. So yeah, if you go to the weather service SA, you type climate data on Google, you will find a link. It will have a Google Drive or folder that will link you to Google Map, and then you will see all the weather stations close to you. So the last time I was checking in KZN, it's quite a very distributive number of stations. Just the problem with most of the stations is they don't record data continuously. And I asked one of the guys, they told me that there's so much vandalism. So that's the unfortunate part. But when you look across the country, there's so many radar stations. It's quite a lot compared to other African countries. And you find data ranging from 1960, 2000, 1992. The satellite data is also available from 1992 and 1994. So yeah, it's quite comprehensive. I would suggest that they invest more into protecting it. I think that will definitely offset the problems we have with the floods in KZN, because in my view, it wasn't supposed to occur in such a way if the radar or the stations were good. But in any way, there were some lackings there and there. So yeah, regarding the burning of grasslands, there are some quite comprehensive articles that are saying definitely does contribute to climate change. So, and of course, with land mineration, so we will need to relook the whole burning of grasslands in Africa, especially if we want to do precision grazing, because if you look at it, yes, it does bring out the grass, and the particular animals can be able to restock, but the biomass and all the bacteria in the soil gets disturbed. So it's a very big problem in grasslands. So I would say that, it's a government thing. It will need to be like, okay, so if we don't burn the grass to regenerate it, what other methods can we have? And the research now suggests that if you put a lot of cattle, they can stamp the soil and regenerate the grass naturally. So herding is one way to go about it. And yeah, the scientific research is conclusive in that way. So that's just one suggestion. But I think from a cultural point of view, because I also grew up in Mpumalanga, if you tell the old people that, you know what, we don't need to burn the grass. We just need to do a rotational grazing, put the stalks in a compacted way, and then in that way, we'll regenerate the grass. And that can work, but obviously it needs a different mindset, because our old people, they say whatever has been working is working. So yeah, that's for me. But anyway, thank you for the presentation. I think if you really do record a lot of the climatic data, there is so much objectivity and subjectivity, which is a very big concern, because I know in Europe, for example, if we do this kind of studies, we definitely go for a lot of the indigenous crops. We look at what happens to them, and then we infer that if there is a damage or disturbance of the indigenous crops, for example, the one that are non-invasive, then we can infer that there is some disturbance, maybe from the temperature and the climate, but mostly it's well funded and the programs run continuously. The skill level is also high. So I think we also need that level in South Africa, where we can, get good minds together and work to make it really, really, no gaps at all. So thank you, guys. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Gift. That's quite interesting. The stocking, right? you mentioned. I wish we had more time to actually talk about that. It's quite interesting. I mean, I'm not a pasture person, but I just find that interesting.
Indeed.
Yeah, no, yeah. So thank you very much. All right. I see now we don't have other hands, and anyway, it is already after 9. So I don't know if there is any comment. Maybe Mr. Mashele, is there anything you would want to say?
Thank you, Dr. Sadi. I think for me, I hear the interesting ideas, and I think there's a lot to benefit on my case, and I will take what suggestions have been made here and try to implement them in terms of the things that we do back in the office. Maybe some other time we can also talk about some of the things that are available, particularly for us. Someone mentioned the disaster that was hitting us in terms of how we respond to that, and many other tools that are now available. I think maybe at some point, I don't know when, we can maybe plan some time and we talk about some of the things that we are currently using to extract information, so that at least it is much available at a higher rate. This is just what we have currently, with regards to how we responded to the disaster, how information was collected, and later this is going to be used. In fact, it is being used now to guide the relief efforts for the entire province. And this is just one of the things that we can do, and I think we can implement these kind of things also in other spaces of our work. But maybe we can dedicate some time to the Sunday later on, and we can see how we could integrate technology so that we can collect information and improve the tools of collecting that information, especially since we know that there are problems related to whether it's the weather stations or many other things that we are currently relying on. But yeah, in terms of technology, I think maybe we need to look into something like that. Otherwise, I think I've had a good time, and I will take all the suggestions back, and I will try and implement a lot of these things that I've learned here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mashele. And I think one thing I forgot to say, I think this might assist Wonkosi as well. And the question that he asked about the weather stations. I think he asked if I know how many we have. I'm also not sure how many we have in the province. But I know that the sugar industry, they also have weather stations in different parts of the province. So I mean, I had access to that data, I'd say maybe 2-3 years ago, but I don't have that access anymore. But I'm sure that if you could contact the sugar industry, it would be possible for you to have access to that information, and it looked reliable. I'm also not a climate person, but I mean, a lot of people in the industry were using it, and I also used it, so I think it is reliable. But please, maybe we can even talk after this, and then we can actually connect with the guy that deals with or that is responsible for those weather stations. Okay.
Thanks, Doc.
All right, cool. Thank you. Colleagues, thank you very much for your time and the discussion that we had. And thank you for the questions and the comments. Thank you very much. Mr. Mashele, once again, thank you